Find these and more to soundtrack your summer across SiriusXM and with the SiriusXM app.
Visit www.siriusxm.com/go to sign up online quickly and activate your radio. If you haven't subscribed to SiriusXM yet, you're missing out on over 140 channels of sports, news, talk, and entertainment, plus commercial-free music. Get play-by-play from your teams, your favorite music, commercial-free, and personalities like Howard Stern. No matter where you live, unlock it all now. Activate your radio by visiting www.siriusxm.com/go to sign up online quickly or call 844-711-8800 now. It's back. Christopher Matt Anderson. Hear the passion. Be aggressive. Get something done. Hear the knowledge. The game, folks, is about to play. And that's what it comes down to. Hear the personality. I'm going to start you tonight. Get some legends. Does that make any sense to you? Besides of space? It's Mad Dog Unleashed with Christopher Russo. Weekdays 3 p.m. Eastern on Mad Dog Sports Radio, Channel 82, or anytime on the SiriusXM app. Free for most subscribers. Listen to Mad Dog Unleashed. Activate your subscription now by calling 844-711-8800 or head over to SiriusXM.com to sign up quickly.
Yeah, I was born in 1995. I'm like last week, but I like to say that I've grown up alongside reality TV as a genre. It is a very distinctly 21st century medium. I think we forget about that because it's so pervasive in our lives today. And it's really interesting when I thought back on kind of my life over the last 3 decades. It's idea that for I think a lot of people, you might grow up just outside Red Deer, Alberta, for a lot of people like middle Canada, middle America, people think that they don't know a queer trans person in their real life. Reality TV might be the first place that they have been seeing a real person, not a character written by somebody, but a real queer trans person on TV. And that can be really impactful both for allies who don't know their allies yet, or people who have empathy for the life of queer trans people in their lives. But also, of course, for young people coming up and seeing things or seeing possibilities and want to themselves reflect out there. So the show, contains 6 episodes. I think it's a great binge listen, I will say. All the episodes are out now. Looks at that history, kind of traces those parallel paths that we can see between some of these movements of representation and visibility, and how these different shows and properties open those doors or close some doors or whatnot along the way.
And you chose some characters, right? You chose some specific people to sort of get into some of these ideas. So for example, you got to interview Zeke Smith from Survivor. Tell me about his story and what you guys talked about.
Yeah, so Zeke Smith was on seasons 33 and 34 of Survivor, which there are so many seasons of Survivor, but he's quite a memorable character. He was on Millennials versus Gen X, and then on Game Changers, the immediate season right after. And he was quite a main character on season 33. He was this fun guy, floral shirts, big mustache, and he came back to the next season, and about partway through the season, another contestant, Jeff Varner at Tribal Council, outed him as trans to the rest of the contestants. And he had been in the trans community called stealth until that point. He hadn't really disclosed it publicly. He hadn't really talked about it, and it was brought up as this deception, but as a game move by this other player, saying, "Look, he's lying to you all about this aspect of himself. What else is he lying to you about?" And the rest of the tribe was like, "What the heck? That was not cool." And then they all kind of collectively, without even voting, decided to vote out the guy who outed him, which is nice or whatnot, but also, this was in 2016, 2017-ish, and I was I really connected to, who I really felt like an affinity for, and so watching that experience, I think, really helped kind of guide my transition a few years later, and kind of see that possibility of this funny guy with floral shirts and whatnot, and then maybe that's what I want to be. And so getting to talk to him about that a few years removed from that experience, and being able to kind of share that personal story with him, but also see how his life has moved on from being a reality TV character. And something that he says, and we have it in the first episode that really guides the series, is he talks about being casually trans now, where public saw him as this thing, and he wrote this big thing in the Hollywood Reporter after it happened happened to him and all this stuff. But now he's just like, he's married to Nico Santos from Superstore, and they have a house in the LA suburbs and a dog and a life, and he's just a guy who happens to be trans. And that idea of kind of casual queerness, casual transness really came to inform the show about people who are on these shows, people who have these experiences, people who are these heightened versions of these characters, then are also just normal people who happen to be this. And that's, I think, a progress we've seen over the past few decades in how these folks' stories are told on a whole host of different types of shows.
That itself is a significant shift, like the shift from being like, oh, I'm the person that people know this entire world through, to being like, no, I'm just living my life. And I imagine there must be a relief that comes with that. I want to talk about, with the couple of minutes that we have left here, but the RuPaul of it all, because I feel like that's really important. And we kind of set it up by having that RuPaul clip. Talk to me about the impact of RuPaul's Drag Race on queer representation on reality TV.
I mean, do we have 4 hours here? I mean, that's a podcast unto itself, right?
Yes.
We did dedicate one episode of the show to it, and I think that when we think about queer reality TV, we think about RuPaul, we think about the RuPaul Empire. I know myself, in my personal life, I like to call it my gay tithe whenever I go watch RuPaul's Drag Race, because it's not something I really want to do, but it's something I just feel like I have to do culturally.
Yeah.
I think that it's changed drag for forever. I think drag as an art form is irreparably changed by Drag Race and these new generations of girls coming up planning to go on the show and forming their kind of relationship to the art form with going on the show. And I think that's a new dimension about, and we can play that, I think, with a lot of different reality shows of people who have become professional reality TV contestants and influencers in that space. And I think Drag Race has become a really fascinating case study of that within the queer and trans community. And also, how big can it get? How many Drag Race spin-offs can we get? How much of the world will RuPaul
The limit does not exist.
What happens when RuPaul's gone? It's crazy stuff, yeah.
Just with maybe about 30 seconds we have left here, when people listen to your show, what are you hoping to get out of it?
I hope that folks get that kind of understanding of that link between the history. I really like to stress that, this is, I love a chat podcast, as we are here.
Yeah.
This is more like it's a doc. There's clips, it's woven into these interviews and into this narrative. And I have to shout out our writer and producer, the great Canadian playwright Daniel McIver, who worked on this, which is, he was not a podcaster, and he came and worked on this. And I think that what he brought was this sense of time before 1995 and perspective on all of that coming together. So I hope folks of whatever generation and whatever relationship kind of build that empathy, build that excitement, and use it to go find some shows that they want to watch.
Mel Woods, always grateful for you. Mel Woods is a senior editor at Extra Magazine in Vancouver. Please make sure you check out their new podcast. It's called Get Queer.
Woke up at 4:45 to start a fire.
Me and making the decision. I didn't know anything about being grown where I'm going to have to make the decision. I'm going to have to be out there.
iconic music venue in Canada, an absolute milestone in the careers of musicians who stand on the historic stage. And you have a front row seat. A new season of episodes now available. Bahamas, The Glorious Sons, The Sadies, Field Guide, Serena Ryder, O.C. Elliott, and Chantal Kreviazek. CBC Music, live at Massey Hall. Watch free on CBC Gem. Jarrett Martineau hosts Reclaimed.
In an hour, you could hear everything from powwow music to like a soft acoustic ballad to an electronic record to like a dub track, all in the same hour from an indigenous artist from any part of the world. Eclecticism is an overused word, obviously, but I think the sheer diversity that gets represented on the show is something that's totally unique.
Reclaimed with Jarrett Martineau.
ये भी हो जाएगा आपका और
Perspective found inspiration for nearly 60 years and served Cape Breton, Nova Scotia. The extraordinary arts pioneer Joan Jonas coming up on Ideas. From CBC News, The World This Hour, I'm Gina Louise Phillips. Bill C-5, the government's major projects bill, has received royal assent, making it law. This gives Ottawa the power to fast-track approvals for infrastructure projects it believes will boost the Canadian economy. It's faced heavy opposition over the speed it passed through the House of Commons and come under fire from environmental activists and Indigenous groups. Prime Minister Mark Carney says the legislation is needed to help Canada reduce its economic reliance on the United States. Premier Danielle Smith argues that support for Alberta separatism is strong, despite the fact the Separatist Party came in third in a provincial by-election this week.
Normally it's a few hundred votes or a couple percentage points. It was 17% in one of the most recent by-elections. I take that seriously.
Smith says separatist sentiment was caused by Ottawa and how federal policies have hampered Alberta's oil and gas industry.
And if Ottawa wants to work with me to cause that sentiment to subside, then we need to materially address the 9 bad laws that have created that negative investment climate.
Smith says she's waiting until Parliament resumes sitting in the fall to see what the Carney government is going to do. The sex trafficking trial of Sean Diddy Combs is in its final stretch. Chris Reyes is outside the New York courthouse with the details.
After more than 6 weeks of testimony from 34 witnesses, the prosecution tied it all together one last time for the jury in an effort to convince them to convict Sean Diddy Combs. The rap mogul is facing multiple charges, including racketeering and sex trafficking. He's accused of using his business empire over a period of almost 2 decades to coerce women into engaging in freak-offs, drug-fueled marathon sex sessions with male escorts. Prosecutor Christy Slavic described Combs as the leader of a criminal enterprise who used power, fear, and violence to get what he wanted. She described his staff as part of an inner circle who covered for him. The defense will deliver their closing arguments on Friday. Combs has pleaded not guilty to all the charges. If convicted, he could get life in prison. Chris Reyes, CBC News, New York.
828
to end the war, decimating, obliterating, destroying Iran's nuclear capabilities.
The Pentagon is providing key senators with a briefing on the operation. Public health reports show measles cases are on the rise in many places in Canada, and at the same time, a new study suggests childhood vaccination rates have been dropping globally in recent years. Christine Burak has more.
It is nearly impossible to put this genie back in the bottle.
Measles is spreading in Alberta, with new data showing more than 1,100 cases. Craig Jenny is an infectious disease researcher at the University of Calgary. He says the highly infectious airborne virus is moving into larger communities just outside Calgary and Edmonton.
So going to the supermarket, going to school, going to the gym, there is a reasonable chance you may be exposed to measles.
British Columbia is reporting more cases as well. While many recover, measles can cause severe complications, including pneumonia, brain inflammation, and in rare prematurely and infected with measles died in Ontario this month. That province is seeing a slight drop in new cases, reporting 33 in the past week. But the total since the outbreak in October now exceeds 2,200. Most of those infected were unvaccinated. Christine Birak, CBC News, Toronto.
Severe thunderstorms swept across France last night. A 12-year-old boy and a 59-year-old man were killed, hit by falling trees. In Normandy, an 11th century church had its roof ripped off and its bell tower collapsed. And that is the world this hour. For CBC News, I'm Gina Louise Phillips.
And now the weather forecast for Toronto, Hamilton, and Niagara area this evening. 40% chance of shower with risk of a thunderstorm, a low of 16. Friday, mainly cloudy with 40% chance of showers in the morning and earlier in the afternoon with risk of a thunderstorm. A high of 26 in Toronto, a high of 29 in Hamilton and the Niagara area.
Welcome to Ideas. I'm Nala Ayed. In the 1960s, New York artists were part of a seismic upheaval, expanding the concept of what defines art. One of the standouts of the contemporary art movement was Joan Jonas, an American visual artist and pioneer of video and performance art. Jonas was originally going to be a sculptor, but instead became fascinated with creating live performances, incorporating movement, dance, literature, props, and masks, as well as her drawings and films. A revolutionary departure from gallery-hung works. Art that was not easily commodified, but wildly original and daring. Jonas performed her early work on the streets of New York and in her Soho loft.
For me, it was much more dynamic and interesting to enter this other world of live art.
Now 88, she has long been celebrated in Europe, including a major exhibition at London's Tate Modern Gallery. But it wasn't until 2024 that she finally received her crowning recognition in the United States, when New York's Museum of Modern Art, MoMA, organized a major retrospective of her work. Holland Cotter, a chief art critic at the New York Times, calls her one of the great and still undersung creative figures of our time. An explanation for that lies in the deep biases against female artists of her era. Jonas lives most of the year in her New York Soho dance studio. And Hughes. Nearly 55 years ago, she joined a group of friends and New York artists who set up some homes on the stunning coastal cliffs of western Cape Breton, including composer Philip Glass, artist June Leaf, photographer Robert Frank, and Jonas's then partner Richard Serra, who would become known as one of the greatest sculptors of his time. A fascinating, talented group of extraordinary artists coming to a place then mostly unknown to outsiders, at a time when land was available and cheap, before a luxurious world-class golf course came to the area,